Husband called me mutilated after my cancer surgery and disappeared. Years later, he returns, but I'm marrying the man who stood by me. I never thought I'd be sharing my story on Reddit, but here I am. I'm Lisa, 32 years old, and I've been through a roller coaster of a life these past few years. It all started when I met my husband, James, at a friend's party when we were in our early 20s. I was 22, fresh out of college and starting my first job as a junior graphic designer. James was 24, working as an accountant at a small firm. I remember the night we met so clearly. My best friend, Lisa, had dragged me to this party, insisting I needed to get out more. I was always the shy, introverted type, preferring a quiet night in with a book to a loud party. But that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the way the fairy lights twinkled in the backyard, or the soft melody of an acoustic guitar playing in the background. James was standing by the makeshift bar, laughing with a group of friends. Our eyes met across the room, and I felt an instant connection. He had these warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. It sounds cliché, but it really was like time stood still for a moment. We spent the entire night talking, discovering we had so much in common. We both loved old movies, had a secret passion for terrible reality TV shows, and dreamed of traveling the world someday. James was funny and kind, with a gentle demeanor that put me at ease immediately. We started dating soon after. Our first date was a disaster. We went to a fancy restaurant and I spilled red wine all over my white dress. But instead of being embarrassed, James made me laugh about it. He took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders, then suggested we ditch the fancy place and go get burgers instead. That's when I knew he was special. Our relationship progressed quickly. We moved in together after a year, adopting a scruffy rescue dog we named Charlie. James proposed 2 years later on a quiet Sunday morning over breakfast. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was perfect for us. He said he wanted to spend every Sunday morning for the rest of his life with me. We got married in a small ceremony with just our close friends and family. It was a beautiful day in June, the sun shining brightly as we said our vows in my parents' backyard. I remember looking into James's eyes as we exchanged rings, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. The first few years of our marriage were great. We both had good jobs. I had been promoted to senior designer, and James had moved to a larger accounting firm. We traveled a bit, crossing off destinations on our bucket list. We went to Paris for our first anniversary, ate gelato in Rome, and watched the northern lights in Iceland. Life was good, and we were genuinely happy together. Everything changed when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 28. It started with a small lump I found during a routine self-exam. I didn't think much of it at first, but decided to get it checked out just in case. The day the doctor called with the results, I felt like the ground had disappeared from under my feet. James was supportive at first, coming to all my appointments, and helping me through the initial shock. I remember him holding my hand tightly as the oncologist explained the treatment plan. He promised we'd get through this together, that he'd be there every step of the way. The chemotherapy was brutal. I lost my hair, felt constantly sick, and struggled with my body image. Some days, I could barely get out of bed. James tried to help, but I could see the strain it was putting on him. He started becoming distant, spending more time at work or out with friends, leaving me to deal with the side effects alone. I tried talking to him about it, but he'd always brush it off, saying he was just stressed about work. But I could feel him pulling away. The man who used to hold me close every night now slept on the far side of the bed, barely touching me. The real turning point came after my double mastectomy. It was a difficult decision, but after discussing it with my doctors, I felt it was the best choice to reduce the risk of cancer returning. I thought James would understand, but his reaction was devastating. The night after I came home from the hospital, James got drunk. He stumbled into our bedroom, reeking of whiskey. I was still groggy from the pain medication, but his words cut through the haze. He told me he couldn't stand to look at me anymore. He said I wasn't the woman he married, that he felt like he was living with a different person. He called me mutilated, and said he didn't sign up for this. I was heartbroken. Here I was, fighting for my life, and the person who was supposed to love me unconditionally was telling me I was undesirable. We had a huge fight that night, with both of us saying hurtful things. I told him he was a coward, that he had broken his vows. He yelled back that he never asked for a sick wife, that this wasn't the life he wanted. The next morning, James was gone. He left a note saying he needed some time to think. At first, I thought he'd come back in a few days, that he just needed to clear his head. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. James never came back. I tried calling him, his family, his friends, but no one knew where he was. It was like he had vanished into thin air. His parents were just as confused and hurt as I was. They couldn't understand how their son could do this. I was left to deal with my recovery, both physical and emotional, all alone. The silence in our house was deafening. Charlie, our dog, would wander from room to room, whining softly, looking for James. It broke my heart all over again. My parents were furious with James. They wanted to file a missing person report, but since he had left voluntarily and taken his things, the police couldn't do much. My dad wanted to hire a private investigator, but I asked him not to. As much as it hurt, I had to accept that James had chosen to leave. I was in a daze for months, trying to come to terms with not only my changed body, but also the loss of my marriage. Some days I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. The scars from my surgery seemed like a roadmap of everything I had lost. My breasts, my hair, my husband, my future. As time passed, I slowly started rebuilding my life. I focused on my health, went back to work, and tried to rediscover who I was as a person. It wasn't easy, but I had amazing support from my parents and friends. Lisa, my best friend from college, practically moved in with me for a while. She'd forced me to get out of bed, to eat, to start living again. I threw myself into my work, taking on more projects at the design firm. I even started freelancing on the side, creating logos and websites for small businesses. It gave me a sense of purpose, something to focus on besides my grief. 2 years after James left, I met someone new. Tom came into my life unexpectedly. He was a client at the design firm looking for a new brand identity for his startup. From our first meeting, there was an easy rapport between us. Tom was different from James in every way. He was patient, kind, and never made me feel insecure about my scars. At first, I was hesitant to start anything. The wounds from James's departure were still raw, and I wasn't sure I was ready to trust anyone again. But Tom was persistent, in the gentlest way possible. He asked me out for coffee, then dinner. We took things slow, and over time, I found myself falling in love again. Tom knew about my past, about James and the cancer. He never pushed me to talk about it, but he was always there to listen when I needed to. He accepted me for who I was, scars and all. With Tom, I started to feel beautiful again. Last month, Tom proposed. We were at home, making dinner together, something we love to do. He got down on one knee right there in our kitchen, a wooden spoon still in his hand, and asked me to marry him. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was perfect for us. It reminded me of James's proposal all those years ago, but this time, it felt right in a way I can't explain. We've been planning our wedding, and I've been happier than I've been in years. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Yesterday, I received a call from James's sister, Emily. We used to be close, but after James left, we gradually lost touch. Seeing her name pop up on my phone was a shock. She told me James was back in town and wanted to talk to me. Apparently, he had been living in another state this whole time, trying to find himself or whatever. Emily said he regretted leaving and wanted to make amends. I'm shocked and confused. Part of me is angry that James thinks he can just waltz back into my life after abandoning me during the hardest time of my life. Another part is curious about what he has to say. Does he know about Tom? What could he possibly say to explain his actions? Tom knows about the call and says he'll support whatever decision I make. He's been incredibly understanding, but I can see the worry in his eyes. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize what we have. I don't know what to do. Should I meet with James and hear him out? Or should I ignore him and move on with my life with Tom? I've worked so hard to heal and move forward, and I'm worried that seeing James might bring back all the pain and insecurities I've fought to overcome. But there's a small part of me that wants answers. Why did he leave? Where has he been? Does he know what he put me through? Reddit, I could really use some advice. What would you do in my situation? Update 1. Thank you all for your comments and support. I've been overwhelmed by the responses, and it's given me a lot to think about. I wanted to give you an update on what's happened since my last post. After much deliberation and talking it over with Tom, I decided to meet with James. I know many of you advised against it, but I felt I needed closure to fully move on. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop in town. Tom was hesitant about the idea, but understood my need for closure. He offered to wait nearby in case I needed him, which I gratefully accepted. The day of the meeting, I was a bundle of nerves. I changed my outfit 3 times, unsure of how to present myself. Should I dress up to show James what he missed out on? Or dress down to show I didn't care? In the end, I settled on a simple blouse and jeans, my usual everyday look. As I walked into the coffee shop, my heart was pounding. I spotted James immediately, sitting at a corner table, nervously fidgeting with a coffee cup. Seeing him after all this time was surreal. He looked older, more worn down than I remembered. His hair had started to gray at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes that weren't there before. As soon as he saw me, James stood up, knocking over his chair in his haste. He looked like he wanted to hug me, but stopped himself, uncertainty clear on his face. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before I took the initiative and sat down. James broke down in tears almost immediately, apologizing profusely for leaving. His words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them in for years. He told me about how he had struggled with depression and anxiety after my cancer diagnosis, feeling helpless and unable to cope with the possibility of losing me. He explained that the night he left, he had a mental breakdown. The stress of my illness, combined with his own mental health issues, had become too much for him to handle. He couldn't face the reality of potentially losing me to cancer, so instead, he ran away from everything. James ended up in a small town across the country, where he worked odd jobs to make ends meet. He lived in a tiny studio apartment, barely making enough to get by. It was there, hit rock bottom, that he finally sought counseling to deal with his issues. He spoke about the guilt that had eaten away at him every day. He said he thought about coming back countless times, but was too ashamed of his actions. It was only when he heard through mutual friends that I was getting married that he realized he might lose me forever if he didn't try to make amends. As James talked, I found myself feeling strangely detached. The pain and love I once felt for him seemed like a distant memory. I looked at this man, who I had once thought was the love of my life, and felt nothing. No anger, no love, just a vague sense of pity. When he finished talking, I took a deep breath and told him my side of the story. I described the hell I went through, not just with cancer, but with his abandonment. I told him about the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I had done wrong to make him leave. I spoke about the struggle to rebuild my life, to learn to love myself again after being abandoned at my most vulnerable. James listened, tears streaming down his face. When I finished, he asked if there was any chance we could try again. He said he still loved me and wanted to make things right. I was shocked by his request and felt a surge of anger. Did he really think he could just come back after all this time and pick up where we left off? I told James that while I appreciated his apology, too much had happened for us to ever go back. I explained that I had found happiness with Tom, someone who stood by me through thick and thin. I said that his actions had shown me what true love wasn't, and that with Tom, I had found what real partnership and support looked like. James seemed devastated but nodded in understanding. As we were about to leave, he asked if we could at least be friends. I told him honestly that I didn't think that was possible. Too much had happened, and I needed to prioritize my healing and my future with Tom. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Seeing James and hearing his explanation didn't change anything for me. If anything, it reaffirmed my decision to move forward with Tom. When I got home, Tom was waiting for me. I broke down in his arms, releasing all the emotions I had held back during the meeting. Tom held me, reassuring me that he was there and wasn't going anywhere. We spent the evening talking about the meeting, about my feelings, about our future together. This experience has made me even more certain about my decision to marry Tom. We've decided to move up our wedding date. Life is too short to wait when you know you found the right person. In the days following the meeting with James, I've had time to reflect on everything that's happened. I realized that while James's actions hurt me deeply, I no longer carry anger towards him. I hope he finds peace and happiness in his life, just not with me. I've also been thinking about how this experience has changed me. I'm stronger now, more resilient. I know what I want in life and in a partner, and I'm not afraid to stand up for myself. It's a far cry from the shy, insecure woman I was when I first met James all those years ago. To those who are going through similar situations, I want you to know that healing is possible. It's not easy, and it takes time, but you can find happiness again. Don't let someone else's actions define your worth. You deserve someone who will stand by you through the worst times, not just the best. Thank you again, Reddit, for all your support and advice. It truly helped me navigate this difficult situation. Your words of encouragement gave me the strength to face James and to stand firm in my decisions. I'm looking forward to this new chapter in my life with Tom, and I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned along the way. Update 2. It's been a few months since my last update, and a lot has happened. I wanted to share with you all because your support has meant so much to me throughout this journey. Tom and I got married last month in a beautiful, intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. We chose a small vineyard for the venue, with rows of grapevines stretching out behind us as we said our vows. It was everything I could have hoped for and more. As I walked down the aisle and saw Tom's face light up, I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision. He looked at me with such love and adoration, it made my heart swell. When we exchanged rings, Tom's hands were shaking slightly, and I could see tears in his eyes. It was a moment I'll cherish forever. The week before the wedding, I received an unexpected email from James. My heart skipped a beat when I saw his name in my inbox, but I made myself read it. He congratulated me on my upcoming marriage and apologized again for everything that had happened. He said he understood now that we could never be together again, and that he was going to respect my wishes and keep his distance. James also mentioned that he was moving to another state for a job opportunity and to start fresh. While part of me felt relieved, another part felt a strange sense of closure. It was as if the last chapter of our story together had finally been written, allowing me to fully embrace my new life with Tom. Our honeymoon was a dream come true. We spent 2 weeks traveling through Italy, something we had both always wanted to do. We wandered hand in hand through the streets of Rome, got lost in the canals of Venice, and watched the sunset over the rolling hills of Tuscany. It was during a quiet moment in Florence, as we sat on a bench overlooking the city, that Tom and I had a heart-to-heart about everything that had happened. He told me how proud he was of me for facing my past and coming out stronger. We talked about our future together and the family we hope to build. It was during this conversation that we decided to start trying for a baby. I know some might think it's too soon, but after everything I've been through, I've learned that life is precious and short. We both feel ready for this next chapter in our lives. The decision to try for a baby wasn't an easy one for me. Given my history with cancer, I was worried about potential complications or the cancer returning. We had long discussions with my oncologist, who assured us that enough time had passed since my treatment and that many survivors go on to have healthy pregnancies. Still, there's always a lingering fear in the back of my mind. As for my health, I'm happy to report that I've been cancer-free for 4 years now. My last checkup showed no signs of recurrence, and my doctor is optimistic about my long-term prognosis. I still have moments of insecurity about my body, but Tom's love and support have been instrumental in helping me feel beautiful and confident again. I've also started volunteering at a local support group for cancer survivors. It wasn't something I initially planned to do, but after running into my old chemo nurse at the grocery store, she suggested I might find it helpful. At first, I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I was ready to relive those memories or if I had anything valuable to offer. But from the first meeting, I knew I had made the right choice. Sharing my story and helping others who are going through similar struggles has been incredibly healing for me. It's given me a sense of purpose and helped me turn my painful experience into something positive. There's one woman in the group, Jenny, who reminds me so much of myself 4 years ago. She's going through treatment and her husband recently left her. Seeing her struggle brings back painful memories, but it also allows me to offer the support and understanding I wish I had had during that time. Looking back on everything that's happened, I'm amazed at how far I've come. There were times when I thought I'd never be happy again. But here I am, married to an amazing man and looking forward to starting a family. Of course, life isn't perfect. I still have bad days where the memories of my illness and James's abandonment hit me hard. There are moments when I look in the mirror and struggle with the scars left behind, but these moments are becoming fewer and farther between. Tom and I are settling into married life, figuring out our routines and making plans for the future. We're looking at houses, dreaming of a place with a big backyard for our future children to play in. It's a far cry from where I was just a few years ago, and sometimes it feels almost too good to be true. As I write this update, I'm filled with a sense of hope and excitement for what the future holds. I'm grateful for the second chance at love and life that I've been given, and I don't take a single day for granted. To anyone out there who's going through a tough time, whether it's illness, heartbreak, or any other challenge, I want you to know that it does get better. It might not happen overnight, and the path might not be easy, but you have the strength within you to overcome anything. Thank you again, Reddit, for being there for me through this journey. Your kindness and support have meant more than you know. Update 3. Hello, everyone. It's been almost a year since my last update, and I wanted to share some news with you all. First and foremost, I'm thrilled to announce that Tom and I are expecting our first child. I'm currently 6 months pregnant with a little girl. After everything I've been through, this pregnancy feels like a miracle. We're both over the moon and can't wait to meet our daughter. Finding out I was pregnant was a whirlwind of emotions. When I first saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I burst into tears, a mixture of joy, disbelief, and fear. Tom found me sitting on the bathroom floor, clutching the test, and immediately knew. He scooped me up in his arms, and we just held each other, laughing and crying at the same time. My pregnancy hasn't been without its challenges, though. Because of my history with cancer, I'm considered high risk and have had to undergo extra monitoring and tests. There were moments of fear and anxiety, especially in the early stages. But Tom has been my rock through it all. The first trimester was particularly tough. I had severe morning sickness that lasted all day, and there were times when I could barely keep any food down. It brought back memories of my chemotherapy days, which was difficult to deal with emotionally. But unlike then, I had Tom by my side, holding my hair back and making sure I stayed hydrated. We've been busy preparing for the baby's arrival, setting up the nursery and attending parenting classes. It's surreal to think that in just a few months, we'll be parents. Tom's excitement is contagious, and seeing him talk to my belly and plan for our future family melts my heart every time. Last week, we had a 3D ultrasound, and seeing our daughter's face for the first time was an indescribable feeling. She has Tom's nose, and from what we could see, my chin. It made everything feel so much more real. On a different note, I received some unexpected news about James. His sister reached out to me to let me know that James had been in a serious car accident. He's okay now, but it was touch and go for a while. She thought I should know, given our history. I was surprised by how the news affected me. While I no longer have romantic feelings for James, I realized I didn't wish him harm. Tom and I discussed it and decided to send a brief message wishing him a speedy recovery. It felt like the right thing to do, and it helped me realize how much I've healed and moved on. My volunteer work at the cancer support group has continued, and I've even started sharing my story about James leaving and how I found happiness again. It's been incredibly rewarding to see how my experiences can help others who are struggling with similar situations. Jenny, the woman I mentioned in my last update, is doing much better now. She finished her treatment and is cancer-free. We've become close friends, and she's even offered to throw me a baby shower. It's amazing how life works sometimes, bringing people into your life just when you need them. As I look forward to becoming a mother, I can't help but reflect on how much my life has changed in the past few years. From the depths of cancer and heartbreak to the joy of new love and impending motherhood, it's been quite a journey. I'm grateful for every experience, even the painful ones, because they've shaped me into who I am today. And I'm especially grateful for this community, for being there during my darkest times and celebrating with me during the brightest ones. To anyone out there facing challenges, remember that life has a way of surprising us. Keep moving forward one day at a time. You never know what beautiful things might be waiting for you around the corner. Thank you all for being a part of my story. Your support has meant the world to me.